Bernard Sanders got a lot of grief from some corners of the internet. A lot of folks calling him a sellout, weak, these kind of things. We've criticized him. I don't think he's a sellout. I think that there's, frankly, some people on YouTube going a little far these days. They're ranting about Bernie and AOC and Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, and they're making you think that the biggest threat to democracy is not, Pelosi, Biden, Wall Street, or Trump, but, Cori Bush and the squad. But I think Bernie was weak during the campaign, which I've said over and over again. I think Bernie, again, in 2016 and 2020, went to a knife fight holding a spoon. I think Bernie, this is who he is. He would only go up to a certain line. I think Biden was beatable. I think Bernie and his campaign strategy to deal with the corporate media wasn't all there. But overall, we wouldn't have the candidate success, the progressive victories in Congress, Sunrise Movement, Justice Democrats. None of this would be without Bernie Sanders running in 2016 and what he exploded. So he's still very influential in progressive politics. And earlier, I think this is from today, I'm going to read some of it to you. Bernie kind of laid the smackdown on corporate Democrats. This is from Bernie Sanders, published yesterday in USA Today. Corporate Democrats are talking so-called far-left policies. So let me read just a little bit. I am very proud of the hard work that the progressive community put into electing Joe Biden as our next president. And let's be clear, this election was not just a normal election between two candidates. It was much more important than that. It was an election about retaining our democracy, preserving the rule of law, blah, 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 blah. So let's get to him calling out the gaslighting. Now, with the blame game erupting, corporate Democrats are attacking so-called far-left policies like Medicare for All and the Green New Deal for election defeats in the House and the Senate. They are dead wrong. Here are the facts, Bernie writes. 112 co-sponsors of Medicare for All were on the ballot in November. All 112 of them won their elections. 98 co-sponsors of the Green New Deal were on the ballot in November. Only one of them lost. It turns out that supporting universal health care during a pandemic and enacting major investments in renewable energy as we face the existential threat to our planet from climate change is not just good public policy, it's also good politics. According to an exit poll from Fox News, no bastion of socialism, 72% of voters favored the change to a government-run healthcare plan, and 70% of voters supported increasing government spending on green and renewable energy. The lesson is not to abandon popular policies like Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, a living wage, criminal justice reform, and universal child care, but to enact an agenda that speaks to the economic desperation being felt by the working class, Black, white, Latino, Asian, and Native Americans. People are hurting and they are crying out for help. We must respond. I want to just show you one tweet exchange I had today to kind of combat this propaganda. And, sorry if I'm blowing up this guy's spot, but I don't really care. So, Jen, I tweeted, I interviewed Crystal Ball. So I tweeted the clip, and then this guy says, sorry, what works in California, in New York and California doesn't necessarily work in the middle of the country. There isn't a one-size-fits-all policy. Candidates have to run their campaigns based in their districts. Progressives have to understand that. Sanders would have lost in a landslide, by the way. So I responded, that's complete nonsense. Every single poll shows progressive policies, i.e. Bernie Sanders policies, have majority support across the country. In fact, a new Fox News poll showed 72% of Fox viewers supported government-run healthcare. It is a propaganda narrative that progressive policies wouldn't be popular win elections in certain parts of the country. The data and the polls show otherwise, and Bernie's electoral results show him very popular among independents and having decent numbers among Republicans. And then this guy went on, those policy stance didn't help here in Arizona. Most of the Dem congressional hopefuls here didn't get elected against the hard right Trump Republican candidates. So what fellas like this guy doesn't understand is the reason that the Democratic candidates in Arizona, per se, are losing to the hard right Trump Republicans are because they're not running on anything. They're not running for anything. They're running against Trump. They're trying to tie their Republican opponents with Trump. And if people have a choice, they're going to go with the people that actually are open about what they stand for, the Republicans, than the Democrats that basically what they stand for is I'm mildly more palatable than the Republican. So the bottom line is, whether it's Arizona, whether it's Georgia, whether it's Kentucky, whether it's Kansas, many, I'd say maybe half, 60% of Republicans on policies are closet progressives. And Bernie just showed you, you have these corporate Democrats ranting that defund the police and socialism is why they lost. Well, I don't really recall Democratic candidates running ads calling for defund the police. I remember when Republicans were running those spooky fear-mongering ads, all the Democratic candidates were saying, I'm not for defunding the police. I don't recall any of these candidates that lost running on Medicare for all. So Bernie's hitting them with facts, and the corporate Democrats, from Pelosi to Abigail Spanberger, I think her name is, to others, are continuing to, basically, it's really no different than Russiagate. It's really no different than any gaslighting. They're just making it up.
So about what you're saying, we say this all the time. It really comes down to the money. The only reason that these heartless, soulless, democratic creatures and operatives are against Medicare for all and are spewing these lies all over TV and wherever they have their platforms is because of money. It's because they're not going to make their money from the healthcare powers that be if they give in to Medicare for all. So Bernie Sanders rightly points out things, and I'll reiterate this, that 112 co-sponsors of Medicare for all were on the ballot in November. All 112 of them won their races. 98 co-sponsors of the Green New Deal were on the ballot in November. Only one of them have lost an election. So when these people, these Democrats, are trying to spin it as these are unwinnable policy positions, that is simply wrong. But even before we knew the results of these elections, we already know that these Democrats are wrong because Fox News polls are showing us that they're wrong. Even Republicans like Bernie Sanders style policies, even Republicans like Medicare for all, when it is presented to them in a way that isn't spun, when it is presented to them in a way that is human, in a way that makes sense. It is simply the human way to have healthcare. And it is the money that gets in the way. It is the money that stops, a Nancy Pelosi from hopping on board to a Medicare for all. And it only comes down to money. And thank God we have Bernie Sanders, on him all you want, be mad at him for dropping out of the primaries all you want, call him a sellout all you want, although he is not. He's simply a good man who saw a fascist in the White House and wanted to do everything he could to stop it. Thank God we have him to point to the fact that the people want Medicare for all and that people can win, that politicians can win on these policy positions. We do have him to thank for the squad. We do have him to thank for the progressives who are now inspired to the Zoomers and the millennials who will win in the future, who will win in 2022 and beyond. So it's sickening, though, that other Democrats, that these corporatist Democrats will continue to lie to the American people and convince the brunch crowd that it's not possible.
And let's just be clear why they're lying. Because, Pelosi's not an idiot. Abigail Spanberger's not an idiot. Steny Hoyer's not an idiot. None of them are idiots. They might be corrupt, but they're not idiots. They know very well what the polls say. They know full well how popular these positions are. They know full well that actually a lot of Republicans agree with these positions. They know full well, because they have pollsters and consultants that told them, guess what? All the propaganda about Bernie Sanders, he would lose by a landslider. Do you know that Bernie Sanders among independents is wildly popular? that in 2016 he wiped the floor with Hillary Clinton among independents in the Democratic primary? Do you know in his races in Vermont for Senate that he has won a considerable amount of Republican voters in Vermont? The governor of Vermont is Republican, and Bernie has won Republican voters. Bernie has gone to Kentucky and Mississippi and many states and had massive rallies. Of course, there are some Republicans that, they God, guns, grits, and, pro-life, and they're never going to go for Bernie Sanders or progressives. That's fine. But there are a lot of, why did so many Republicans go for this reality TV star, used car salesman? Because he was pushing a lot of things that Bernie pushes. He was full of shit. Trump was full of shit, but he was pushing ending the wars. Trump was in 2016. He was pushing enough with these free trade deals like NAFTA and TPP. There were some overlap between Bernie and Trump. And I could tell you because, again, when I covered Trump on the road in 2016, a lot of Trump supporters said, if not Trump, their second was Bernie. So this is all propaganda and bullshit. And the corporate media is going to push it, and we're going to hear the same ridiculous propaganda heading into 2022 that no. The only way that the Democrats can keep their narrow margin, well, why do they have a narrow margin now of a majority of the House? Why did they lose House seats? We just showed you the people that ran on Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, and progressive positions, they won. The people that lost ran on Trump's awful. My Republican opponent, Trump. My Republican opponent, I'm mildly better. Yeah, you lose when you run on morality, when you run on character, when you run on platitudes, and when you don't inspire people. You generally lose. That's what's going on. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.